I think they were summarily murdered. Uh, you know, there was no due process. There was no, they had no, they were tried in a very short period of time, and then they went over to San Antonio and had the trial, and there was no appellate process. There was, I don't think it. I don't know that I would call it for the good of the whole. They could have very easily have been, instead of hung, they could have been sentenced to time. I mean, I understand you have to enforce rules, you have to enforce order, and you have to say that, there's consequences for decisions. But I think the consequence of hanging 19 soldiers total, I think that is pretty significant, and that I can't see that. And again, I'm looking in hindsight. Maybe some white officer general said, "Hey, we have to show everybody that there cannot be an insurrection. There cannot be, a refusal to follow an order." In that context, you might say it's for the total good. I don't see that, but I do understand somebody having that thought process. But you also, that thought process is counterbalanced by, due process, or what is right. People have a right to defend themselves, and if you don't have officers that are standing up for their men, then you got a problem. You got a problem not with the men, you got a problem with the officer leadership. Being an officer, it's understood, it's a privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege. And with that privilege comes the responsibility to protect the men and women under your charge. Okay, I was a line officer, not a JAG officer. So when I was serving on ships, we could go into harm's way. I mean, it wasn't a desk type job. So uppermost in my mind all the time was, I want to get these men back home safe, all in one piece. That officer that was there that night did not make that decision, was not making that decision, I want to get my men back home all in one piece. And so I think there was a failure of leadership that was not recognized. So, and again, I'm looking at this in 2017 versus 1917. And of course, in 1917, the value of a black life is far less than it is today. Even though you have to take note on how many killings of young black men and women are occurring by police today. I know it is significant, but there was perhaps more that were occurring back then and not being documented. In my family's oral history is my grandmother's father was murdered by a gang of whites in Arkansas. That history is there. No one was convicted. No one was tried. No one was even arrested about the incident. It was said, "Oh well, he died in a drowning." But when they recovered his body, he was badly beaten. His body, it just wasn't a drowning. So, if you look at it 100 years ago and what happened, you think this officer is saying, "Well, do I really want to fight the crowd or, push it?" it's just another black. Just let him go, you know. And then the black soldiers had to say, no, I'm worth something. I'm gonna fight for my life. And so there's that tension between, you know, I'm more than a nigga. I'm a man, and I'm gonna fight for my life.